Thank you, Richa. Thank you, Steve. Those were both fantastic presentations and reflections on the work that city staff has been doing over the last while. And I just want to say on the mobility plan specifically, Chris and I, Moaz and I, and I was actually speaking to Fernanda about this. I think Fernanda said it best, but this mobility plan is a paradigm shift for how we think about the city, and it's incredibly progressive. And I've lived my entire life in Brampton, and was born and raised here, and not to disparage anybody else, but I think show this document to some past city councilors and so on and so forth, and I think there's a level of maybe parochialism that once maybe governed our decision making in the city, but now it feels like we're a leader. So I just want to say I'm very happy to see the level of ambition in this mobility plan, and the same goes for the zoning bylaw. The Brampton Board of Trade was consulted on both the zoning bylaw and the mobility plan. We had a number of members join those consultations. So we thank you for your level of collaboration and consultation there. There are a lot of folks who are outside of Brampton who are in the audience, but I just want you to know that city staff very much develops these big ideas in consultation with residents, with businesses in the city. I want to gift both of you our white paper as well. Those are both copies for you. And Richa, we met on the white paper specifically. And not just you, but Nelson, Fernanda, Brian Lakeman, Henrik. You gave us such good insight and feedback in the development of this as well. So very grateful for that collaboration. So thank you to city staff for all the hard work that they put in. I have a list of questions here, lots of questions, but actually, I want to actually throw this to the audience. And I can always ask my questions, but I want to give folks an opportunity to respond to what they've heard here. So, Sonia, if you can help me out, we got a question from the gentleman here. Yes. This gentleman in the white hat, I believe, raised his hand.
All right, thank you so much. In the presentation, I see a very much futuristic plan into the growth of the city of the Brampton, which is excellent. But my question is that thinking about the futuristic, especially moving toward the air taxis or drone taxis, I didn't see anything on this one. Is there any plan to have that in the city of the Brampton, making more mobility or more easy for everyone to move?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So I didn't mention it in the presentation, but there definitely is a chapter in the Brampton Mobility Plan on emerging technologies and how we can leverage technology to improve goods movement and transportation in the city. There's already some excellent work that's being done in Brampton. I think we're pioneers, and we do have our very first autonomous truck route in Brampton by Loblaws. The company called GATEC has an anonymous sort of truck that does deliveries along a single route, but it is something that is being piloted in Brampton. And so we're already starting to embark on that innovative goods movement sort of trajectory. The Brampton Mobility Plan also looks at different mobility technologies for micromobility. There's a chapter in there that speaks a little bit to autonomous vehicles and the impact that that's going to have on the transportation network. And so, looking at different technology and different technological solutions are definitely a part of the Brampton Mobility Plan for sure.
Thank you. We have Chris Drew, and then this. Yep.
First and foremost, thank you for both of your presentations, along with congratulations on the Brampton Mobility Plan. I do have two brief questions to each of you, please. Risha, I had the pleasure to briefly talk to Fernanda, but throughout your research and in preparation and with your mobility plan, the loud word in this room is congestion. There's tons of contributing factors to that, obviously. What would you consider your top three, let's say, contributing factors You know, is it the volume of the vehicles that you encounter? Is it the constructions on the road that gets delayed? Is it the lack of transportation? What would you say would be the top three?
I would say the top one is probably automobile reliance. I think I mentioned like our city has kind of been built around the car to date. Historical transportation planning has always been auto focused. So when we did transportation planning, we would always focus on, okay, well, how can we move more cars? How can we move more cars? But what that led us to is a city where people are using their car as the primary means to get around. And so we've kind of been over the past several years, and it's not just Brampton is not alone in this. Most GTA municipalities have kind of the same approach of planning for the transportation network in this way, where everybody is now reliant on their car. And so we do have a really, really high auto mode share in Brampton of 81%. And so if we can change that, to Steve's point, that behavior change, there are other cities around the world where it's also cold and there's a cold climate similar to Canada, where people, you know, they want to take, you know, their bike to work, or they want to take that walk to work, or they're able to do that. And I think Brampton is now ready for that change. We now have the densities, and our land uses are changing, and we're building up instead of out. And so we do have destinations that are now going to be closer, that we can walk to, that we can cycle to. And I would say the number one factor is automobile reliance, but I think this is the perfect time in history for that shift to sustainable modes now, and reducing that auto mode share. So our goal is really a 50% auto mode share, and then for 50% of Brampton residents to take sustainable modes. So that includes transit, walking, cycling, but also carpooling is what we're considering there as a sustainable mode too.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question to Steve. The Bill 45 mentioned that there is a waste collection challenge that you're encountering. Can you please elaborate on that, please?
Sure. So one of the three services that will be downloaded to the municipalities is waste collection. So we are currently working with the province and the provincial facilitator on that. Specifics have yet to be ironed out. Unfortunately, I don't have any more details on that, but it's certainly one of the services that through Bill 45 will no longer be done at the upper tier, and then by the lower tiers now.
If I could follow up on that briefly, for Steve, you mentioned Bill 17 as well, and you know the announcements around purpose-built rentals, and Saba, I know, is very excited, and the Canalopuses and so on, who are very excited about these 5,000 projects that are going to be studied. You know, we talk about this a lot at the Brampton Board of Trade, and that's this idea that, you know, we need to negotiate a new fiscal framework for municipalities, and you know, the DC piece. I mean. There will be a financial implication, of course, a fiscal implication. And so, from your perspective, what's your read on the hit to the bottom line, let's say, or the sort of financial impact of DC discounts and waivers?
Yeah. So there's a couple things, and I may not answer the question directly because there's a couple schools of thought on this that I'm still pontificating, if you will. The growth is already here and the growth is coming. That's the reality. So it should our council choose to incentivize net new housing starts by reductions in DCs, there will be a financial impact. Having said that, I have yet to see a body of evidence that would suggest the strain on the existing services would be that much more dramatic than it already is, simply because the growth is coming anyways. So we are at a point now in our housing crisis, and it's a fairly wicked problem, that we can no longer take a soft glove approach. We have to do what I would say very extreme policy measures to kickstart something. The municipalities that have provided incentives so far, I don't think have had enough runway to see if it would create a mass amount of net new homes. And I would say that in addition to DC incentives, there's a number of other factors that would lead to that. So The hit to the bottom line is significant. I don't know if it's going to be as significant as some might say. If my finance department was here, they'd probably say otherwise, but nonetheless, we'll see. And I would say we certainly need to count on other levels of government to make us whole, right? The one thing I've certainly heard time and time again from the province is that they're going to make us whole. I don't know how they're going to do that. Hopefully it's better math than they did to come up with our housing target, but nonetheless, they're going to make us whole.
Thanks for that, Steve. Chris? Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Chris Drew, great presentation. You covered everything, and so great to hear about all the work for purpose-built rental. My friend Samantha Martin from Toronto is also a leader for her clients championing purpose-built rental, in addition to some of the developers that you mentioned, Vijay. Just really quickly, and I'm thinking about my own family, seniors and aging in Brampton, downsizing, but also for mobility. That statistic of 36 billion, which is the cost of collisions and accidents. We hear the 10 billion figure a lot in terms of congestion. We don't often hear the $36 billion figure. So if you could just speak to that about through the new Brampton official plan, the zoning bylaw, the mobility plan, Riverwalk, all the things you're doing for purpose-built rental, how that's going to help seniors in Brampton who want to stay in Brampton and downsize.
Maybe I'll start and then I'll pass it over to Richard to augment. Just so certainly one of the things we're being very purposeful of is ensuring that we have more thinking and thought behind complete communities, making things tighter, right? So the fact that we're shying away from massive 6-lane roads would mean that the distance to cross an intersection to go from your home, say to the drugstore or haircut or what have you, is more appealing for folks to walk. And presumably, if the data bears out, that the likelihood of collisions is going to decrease as well. In addition to that, I would say some of the things that we're doing through purpose-built rental and some of the other mix is to recognize that as people age, they want to age in place, and they may not necessarily want to stay in the home that they raised yourself or myself in. My parents. My mom now is actually in a condominium still in Brampton, left the home that I spent most of my life in the M section because it was just simply too big. So I think by inducing purpose-built rental and really trying to push the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom for families and even parents who are aging with a PSW is some of the thinking behind this policy, and it's fresh out of the gates. We only have one applicant so far, but we'll see. And again, a lot of these programs that council has introduced, the sunset to date is November 2026. Obviously, they're making that policy choice for the term of council to incentivize the applications we already have in the pipeline. Rich, I don't know if you want to touch on the Brampton mobility plan that speaks to how we're helping seniors move.
Yeah, for sure. From a transportation perspective, I'll just give maybe a little anecdotal. I just recently started cycling to work. And one thing that I noticed is the amount of seniors that actually use active transportation infrastructure. There's a lot of seniors that ride their bike. And I think this is where choice becomes really important, because as you age, sometimes maybe you don't have the luxury of driving anymore. And you don't, what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we give all residents of all ages and abilities options to move around that are competitive, convenient, and safe. And so this is where the complete street solution really becomes so important, because what it really aims to do is it balances the right of way. It accommodates space for people to be able to get around in other modes other than a car, especially if they can't. That makes it really important, especially from an equity perspective too. One thing that again, because of the limited time, I didn't mention it in the slides, but the Brampton Mobility Plan, one of the things that we did is we undertook an equity analysis also, where we basically mapped out where there were sort of the spatial, how do I explain it? Like the equity deserving groups and sort of like where they are, and then what transportation options they have available to them, and try to figure out, okay, well, where are those gaps where there's a high percentage of equity deserving groups, but also a lack of accessibility. And we use that analysis to try to prioritize where our projects are going to go. So there was that element that was baked into the Brampton Mobility Plan, which took into consideration also like where are those high percentage of senior populations too.
Thank you. Yeah, that's excellent and very exciting. It seems that we have a question from one J. Paul Massey Singh. No? Okay. All right. We have one more question, then I have a quick question. So just this individual here.
Thank you so much for your time. I was wondering, when I look at the image on the projection of how we'll integrate active transportation within like vehicle transportation, I'm wondering how Brampton's plan to encourage and incentivize and enable active transportation will differ from that of Toronto, because in Toronto the bike lanes are very narrow and they don't really accommodate for the various modes of active transportation. So, are there any plans to maybe give more space for that or anything along that?
That's a great question. So one of the things that I briefly mentioned was that every project that the city undertakes now will undergo a multimodal level of service analysis. And so what that does is it assigns a rating from A to F for different facilities, and it assigns different targets. So if there's a particular road that's going through a really urban area, which let's call it an urban main street, where we know that there is going to be a high percentage of people walking and cycling, an A would be the target. And in order to achieve an A, you would need wider sort of active transportation facilities. Versus if there was a particular road where the land uses around it were more, industrial in nature, focused on goods movement, it might not necessarily need an A. So the target might be sort of a B or a C, which could, to achieve that B or C, you wouldn't need such wide facilities. So this new framework, it's also a really new and innovative way of doing things. I think so far, Ottawa and maybe a couple other municipalities have a multimodal level of service framework. So Brampton is kind of a pioneer in coming up with our sort of methodology for implementing this too, and something that I'm really excited to see how that changes the way that our projects look moving forward too. So I hope that answers your question. The one more thing that I'll mention is the Brampton Mobility Plan is really focused on arterials and collectors. And so for arterials and collectors, typically the cycling infrastructure is in the boulevard. So that already also creates that safety of not being sort of on the road with high-speed vehicles.
Thank you. And let's give Steve and Richa a round of applause. Yeah.